this life that you're embarking in?
Well, I think I have a little bit of experience since I've been here for 4 years, and I've...
Once celebrated as Monaco's golden girl, Princess Charlene's story now reads like a royal tragedy hidden in plain sight. Beneath the elegance, behind the carefully curated public appearances, a far more unsettling reality was quietly unfolding. Whispers of betrayal, rumors of heartbreak, and long painful absences painted a picture very different from the fairy tale once promised. As the world clung to the image of a perfect royal life, Charlene was silently unraveling. This is the untold story of the princess who dared to disappear. Behind Princess Charlene's glittering crown. In July 2011, the world turned its eyes to Monaco, where a royal spectacle was unfolding, one that felt ripped straight from the pages of a modern-day fairy tale. Princess Charlene, a statuesque former Olympic swimmer from South Africa, married Prince Albert II, the sovereign of the opulent Principality of Monaco. The celebrations were grand beyond compare, lasting 2 days, with a civil ceremony followed by a lavish religious service at the prince's palace. Charlene dazzled in an Armani privé gown, hand-embroidered with 40,000 Swarovski crystals and 20,000 mother-of-pearl teardrops. Fireworks lit up the sky over Monaco Harbor, and the guest list sparkled with European royalty, Hollywood stars, and elite dignitaries. For the millions watching, the union was more than a royal wedding, a storybook fantasy brought to life. Charlene, a girl from the quiet suburbs of Benoni in South Africa, had seemingly ascended to a life of tiaras and tradition, stepping into the very role once held by the beloved Grace Kelly. Her natural grace, striking beauty, and calm demeanor seemed to align perfectly with the glitz of the Monegasque throne. Prince Albert, son of Hollywood royalty and European nobility, had finally found his princess. But even in those earliest days of celebration, the whispers had already begun. Rumors surfaced that Charlene had tried to leave Monaco just days before the ceremony. Reports claimed her passport had been confiscated to prevent her from fleeing. The palace, of course, denied it all, attributing the gossip to tabloid sensationalism. But the narrative lingered. Was this the wedding of the decade or a golden cage cleverly disguised as a dream? Publicly, the couple maintained an image of poise and unity. Charlene smiled graciously through events, accompanied Albert with elegance, and took on charitable roles, echoing Grace Kelly's legacy. But behind closed doors, something seemed off. Her body language, often solemn and withdrawn, began to draw attention. While Prince Albert seemed entirely at ease with his public role, Charlene often appeared lost in her own world, struggling with the demands of life under constant scrutiny. As years passed, those quiet observations grew louder. By 2017, more and more royal watchers and media outlets were noting a noticeable emotional distance between Charlene and her husband. Gone were the warm, affectionate gestures that once enchanted the public. In their place were stiff interactions and polite smiles. Charlene seemed more reserved with each passing year, dutiful, yes, but distant, almost as though she were performing a role rather than living a life. Monaco's palace, known for guarding its privacy with the vigilance of a fortress, stayed silent through it all. Even as headlines speculated on the state of the marriage, the official stance never wavered. Prince Albert and Princess Charlene were united in purpose and in love. But the evidence told a more complex story. Whispers of infidelity swirled around Albert. Reports suggested Charlene felt emotionally isolated, overwhelmed by the royal protocols and the expectations placed on her shoulders. Unlike Albert, who had lived his entire life in the royal spotlight, Charlene had once enjoyed anonymity. She was an athlete, someone who thrived in discipline, structure, and freedom. The shift to royal life, where appearances mattered more than authenticity, seemed to slowly chip away at her spirit. By 2020, the gap between appearance and reality had grown too wide to ignore. Charlene began spending extended periods away from Monaco, most notably during a prolonged stay in South Africa. The official explanation was a medical issue, but the timing and length of her absence raised eyebrows. Was it distance for recovery, or distance for escape. Media outlets and royal insiders alike began suggesting the couple were living increasingly separate lives. Charlene's reluctance to participate in royal events, her frequent disappearances from the public eye, and her seemingly strained presence when she did appear, all painted a picture of a woman burdened by the life she once stepped into with hope. The world had watched her marry a prince, but now many were asking, what really happened to the princess after the fairy tale began? The price of a crown and the secrets that followed. Princess Charlene. From the outside, it looked like a dream come true. A girl from South Africa transforming into a real-life princess. But behind the fairy tale veneer, Princess Charlene's new life was not what she had envisioned. After the wedding bells faded in July 2011 and the cameras stopped flashing, Charlene was thrust into a world that was far more complicated than royal titles and glittering gowns. Her life was no longer her own. It belonged to the crown, to the country of Monaco, and to the public that scrutinized her every move. Long before Charlene ever wore her custom Armani dress or stood beside Prince Albert at the altar, whispers had already begun to swirl. By 2000, Charlene had made a name for herself as an elite swimmer, representing South Africa on the world stage. Her life back then was defined by grueling training sessions, athletic goals, and personal freedom. The moment she stepped into the orbit of Monaco's royal family, everything changed. She had no way of knowing the weight that would come with her new title or the secrets she'd be forced to live with. To understand Charlene's situation, one must first understand Monaco. This tiny principality, nestled along the French Riviera, thrives on its image. Known for its luxury casinos, yachts, and high society lifestyle, Monaco is more than a playground for the wealthy. It's a brand, and at the center of that brand is the royal family. Their image is carefully protected because any scandal doesn't just hurt their reputation, it threatens the country's entire allure. Charlene stepped into that world hoping for stability, love, and perhaps a fresh start. But even before she said, "I do," dark clouds were gathering. Rumors had long circulated about Prince Albert's past affairs. While the press had whispered about possible secret children for years, it wasn't until 2005, just days after Monaco mourned the death of Prince Rainier III, that the truth emerged. A French magazine published photographs of Albert with a young boy. The child, it turned out, was Alexandre Grimaldi, born in 2003 to Nicole Coste, a former flight attendant. Though Albert had acknowledged him privately after a DNA test, the public revelation forced his hand. He had to confirm he was the boy's father. This revelation followed another. In 2006, Albert also admitted to fathering a daughter, Yasmine Grace Grimaldi, in 1992. Though both children were legally excluded from succession due to Monaco's strict royal laws, the damage was done. The prince's image, once untarnished, was now marked by the reality of secret relationships and hidden truths. By the time Charlene and Albert's wedding approached in 2011, the rumors intensified. French media outlets claimed that Charlene had attempted to flee Monaco not once, but 3 times, even allegedly seeking asylum at the South African embassy in Paris. Some said she had learned of yet another paternity suit in the days leading up to the ceremony. Despite the palace's firm denials, speculation grew louder. Was this marriage happening under pressure? Was Charlene walking into a life she no longer wanted? Still, the wedding proceeded, and for a while, the royal couple managed to maintain their public image. But behind the scenes, it was clear that Charlene was struggling. Her expressions during public events were often solemn, her smiles fleeting, and as time passed, her presence became more scarce, leading many to believe that something was deeply wrong. Then came 2020. Just 9 years into their marriage, another scandal erupted. A woman from Brazil came forward, claiming that Prince Albert had fathered her child while he was already in a relationship with Charlene. The child was reportedly conceived in 2005, but the timing of the allegation and the intense media coverage reignited the old questions. Had Albert truly changed, or was he still haunted by the same patterns that had once made Charlene doubt their union in the first place?
Prince Albert, Charlene.
What followed was a wave of renewed interest in their marriage. Observers began analyzing every glance, every appearance, every absence. The cracks that had once been whispered about were now wide open for the world to see. Charlene's long absences from Monaco, especially her extended stay in South Africa during a medical recovery, only deepened suspicions. Was she really healing, or was she finding solace away from the palace walls? As questions grew louder and secrets continued to surface, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a troubled marriage. It was a royal story riddled with complexities, a tale where loyalty, love, and duty collided in ways few could have imagined. But what really drove Princess Charlene to the edge? Love, loyalty, or royal secrets? Keep watching to uncover the truth. Cracks in the crown, love, power, and the illusion of stability. After Princess Charlene returned to Monaco in 2021 from her extended stay in South Africa, the world was already watching with sharpened eyes. What started as a simple trip for conservation work soon turned into months of absence, speculation, and carefully worded press releases that only raised more questions than they answered. At first, the palace claimed she had a severe ear, nose, and throat infection. So serious, they said, that she couldn't board a plane. But as the weeks dragged on and Charlene remained far from her husband, from the palace, and from her royal duties, people began to suspect the truth ran deeper. And when she finally did come home, it wasn't to the fanfare of a royal return. Instead, she was quietly checked into a private treatment facility, reportedly to recover from exhaustion. A vague term that barely scratched the surface of what many believed was a full emotional and mental breakdown. The headlines were relentless. Monaco, a place where appearances mean everything, found itself center stage in a scandal that no amount of pearl-clutching or polished press statements could hide. And while Prince Albert kept to his schedule, attending events and giving reassurances with his signature composed demeanor, the truth was harder to conceal. Something inside the royal marriage had broken, and the fracture was beginning to show. Friends of the princess began to speak, cautiously but clearly. Behind the palace gates, Charlene felt isolated. She was tired of putting on the brave face, tired of hiding her pain behind tiaras and gowns. Those close to her said she felt like she was living in a cage. A golden one, yes, but a cage nonetheless. Each new scandal, each whisper of Albert's past indiscretions, reopened wounds she had barely begun to heal. What made it worse was the lingering suspicion that their marriage had never been built on love, but rather convenience. Albert's long and very public history with models, actresses, and wealthy socialites didn't help. Many royal watchers believed his marriage to Charlene was a carefully planned move to stabilize the monarchy after years of controversy. A beautiful Olympic swimmer from a respectable background could bring the fresh start his image desperately needed. But instead of healing the monarchy's scars, the union seemed to magnify them. Charlene, despite knowing something of Albert's past before the wedding, might not have realized how deeply it would entangle her life. With each allegation of infidelity, even those dating back before their engagement, her confidence seemed to erode. And when a Brazilian woman stepped forward in 2020, claiming Albert had fathered her child while already in a committed relationship with Charlene, the timing could not have been more painful. Just as she was trying to find her footing within the royal family, she was forced to reckon with yet another woman and another child from Albert's shadowed history. The couple's public appearances became tense, even awkward. Charlene rarely smiled. Her posture was stiff, her eyes vacant, and her distance from Albert was noticed by everyone. Gone were the affectionate gestures or moments of shared warmth that once gave the illusion of intimacy. The disconnect was not only emotional, it was visible. Then came the inevitable question: would she leave? Whispers of divorce grew louder, echoing through the halls of the palace and across global media. A separation between Charlene and Albert wouldn't just be a personal heartbreak, it would be a political disaster. In Monaco, where the ruling family's image is central to its identity, even a rumor of royal instability could rattle investor confidence and tarnish the glittering illusion the principality thrives on. And that's when Prince Albert, faced with yet another potential collapse, made a move no one expected. Behind the smile, a price for peace. And that move, as it turned out, wasn't a heartfelt gesture or a dramatic break from tradition. It was something far more calculated. Whispers began to emerge from sources close to the palace, suggesting that the bond holding Charlene and Albert together wasn't just love, duty, or even shared history. It was a financial contract. By 2022, several reputable outlets reported that Prince Albert had agreed to pay Princess Charlene 12 million euros per year, not as a royal allowance or budget for public duties, but as a personal agreement, a deal to ensure she remained by his side, at least in public. The sum was staggering, and so was what it represented, an unspoken understanding that Charlene would fulfill her role as Monaco's princess, attending public events, performing ceremonial tasks, and, most importantly, avoiding scandal. In return, she would be given the wealth, comfort, and elite status that came with her royal title. To many, it looked like damage control masked as devotion. For Albert, this arrangement protected the fragile image of Monaco's monarchy. A messy, public divorce would threaten everything: public trust, tourism, business partnerships, even the principality's diplomatic influence in Europe. And for Charlene, the agreement provided more than luxury. It gave her power in a system where she had long felt powerless. But there was a cost, a steep one. Every time Charlene stepped out in designer gowns or smiled for the cameras, she was doing so under the weight of this arrangement. While the world saw the shimmering dresses and sparkling jewels, few noticed the pain in her eyes. Her once vibrant personality had dimmed. She had become more withdrawn, her expressions more guarded. The joyful Olympic swimmer from Benoni, South Africa, who once dove into the pool with fearless determination, was now navigating a sea of royal politics, betrayals, and expectations. It wasn't just the affairs or the spotlight. It was the complete shift in identity. One moment, Charlene Wittstock was training for international competitions. The next, she was stepping into the shoes of a princess, expected to emulate the elegance and mystery of Grace Kelly, Prince Albert's late mother, and Hollywood's beloved star-turned-royal. But unlike Grace, Charlene didn't have years of grooming or preparation. She was dropped into the deep end, expected to swim not just with grace, but with silence. And all of this while battling private heartbreaks. From the moment of their 2011 wedding, whispers of her hesitance never faded. There were rumors she had attempted to flee Monaco days before the ceremony. Some even said she had sought refuge in the South African embassy in Paris. These claims were always denied, of course, but the quiet sadness she carried seemed to lend them truth. Then came 2021, and with it, yet another test. Charlene traveled to South Africa for a conservation mission, but what was supposed to be a short visit stretched into months. Official statements blamed a severe ear, nose, and throat infection that reportedly required multiple surgeries. She was too ill to fly, they said, but the world had questions. Was this truly a medical emergency or an emotional retreat? Photos from her stay surfaced online. Gone was the glowing royal. In her place stood a frail woman, pale and thin, her face lined with exhaustion. And even when she returned to Monaco later that year, she didn't immediately rejoin public life. Instead, she entered a treatment facility, reportedly to recover from the extreme fatigue caused by both her physical illness and the emotional strain of her role. Still, Charlene wasn't ready to give up. Though her marriage seemed frayed and her smile often forced,
With the build-up toward the wedding because of events in between, but it's all good.
she searched for purpose, and in doing so, she returned to what mattered most to her: charity. Even before becoming a princess, Charlene had a passion for helping children, promoting water safety, and championing conservation efforts. But what if behind Princess Charlene's royal smile was a €1 million contract, And a silent search for purpose through heartbreak? Keep watching. This story is far from over. A princess with a purpose. Amid royal expectations and personal pain, her humanitarian work became a refuge, a place where she could be more than a title, more than a symbol, and that purpose grew stronger with time. Charlene of Monaco, once a star in the Olympic swimming world, never truly left the water behind.
I feel great, I feel wonderful. I do recommend it for anyone to swim. It's fantastic and
It had shaped her spirit, built her discipline, and taught her about survival. In 2012, just a year after her fairy tale wedding in the glimmering halls of Monaco's royal palace, she poured that passion into something far greater than herself, the Princess Charlene of Monaco Foundation. This wasn't just a ceremonial project, it was her mission. The foundation was created to fight an often overlooked global crisis: drowning. Every year, countless lives, especially young children, are lost to water-related accidents. Charlene, who had trained in the pools of Benoni, South Africa, knew how vital swimming and water safety could be. So, she made it her life's work to educate, to prevent, and to protect. Her foundation began its work in Monaco, but quickly expanded its reach. From the beaches of South Africa to the rivers of Bangladesh and the coastlines of India, her team partnered with organizations like Life-Saving South Africa, World Rugby, and even the Red Cross, training not just children but teachers and local leaders. They gave out swimming gear, set up awareness programs, and built entire curriculums centered around saving lives in water. Charlene traveled extensively for these causes, sometimes publicly, often quietly. She visited schools, met with health workers, and stood with young athletes, whether it was children learning to float in shallow pools or rugby players spreading awareness during games. The message was always the same: water can give life, but it can also take it, and knowledge makes the difference. Even as her personal world behind palace walls became more difficult to navigate, Charlene found peace in these moments. Her smile returned when she stood beside young swimmers or helped open a new water safety center. It was perhaps the only place where she wasn't Her Serene Highness, but just Charlene, an athlete, a mother, a woman with a cause.
I think it takes more courage with disabilities to...
But the foundation wasn't her only effort. Charlene's compassion reached far beyond the swimming pool. She backed programs aimed at helping mothers and newborns, particularly in underserved communities. She supported children's hospitals, donated essential supplies, and lent her voice to campaigns for medical equity. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck in 2020 and the world shut down, Charlene stepped forward with quiet urgency. While Monaco, known for its wealth and pristine streets, seemed untouched on the surface, Charlene knew better. She organized medical supply donations, distributed face masks, and supported local hospitals and relief efforts. Her hands-on involvement during those uncertain months stood in sharp contrast to the often aloof image of royalty. She wasn't just signing checks, she was present, involved, and aware. And yet, while she gave herself fully to these causes, the cracks in her marriage were growing deeper. Her appearances alongside Prince Albert became fewer, her expressions stiffer. But Charlene kept showing up for others even when it seemed no one was truly showing up for her. In every school she visited, in every donation she made, and every child she helped teach how to swim, there was a sense of reclaiming control, of rewriting a story that had tried so hard to define her as just a princess in distress.
Parents need to care more for their children, and education is really important, and education through sport. And
behind closed doors, many still whispered about the silence between her and Albert, about the cold distance between their seats at formal events. But outside, on the streets and in the water, people saw something different. They saw a woman fighting to matter, not through her crown, but through her actions. And it's in those actions that Charlene perhaps found the truest form of power, not the kind that comes from royalty, but from empathy, from impact, from choosing to show up when it would have been easier to hide. And while the royal romance that began with so much promise had grown uncertain, her commitment to others had only become more unshakable. Because long before she was a princess, Charlene was a fighter, and even in the heart of a storm, she never stopped swimming. But what do you think truly kept Charlene going? Was it royal duty, quiet rebellion, or something far deeper? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe.